So first, what is a rabbet plane? Well, it cuts rabbets, or rebates. They're called different things depending on where you are, but this is a rabbet. So what it does is it cuts indents on the sides of the boards. So a groove or a dado is in the board with wood on this side. A rabbet is where it is open on the sides like that. See those? Those are all rabbets. So the plane that we are going to look at, it cuts those manually. Some people use a router, some people use a table saw. I really enjoyed using this plane. So let's dive in. I'm going to show you how to set it up, and then I'm going to show you the plane in action. The very first step of any plane, sharpen it. Make sure your iron is sharp. If you bought this new, all you have to do is a little tiny micro bevel, unless you like to polish the entire, let me see if I can catch it in the light. Can you see that little slim flicker of light at the end of the iron? That's my micro bevel. That's all I do. Now, of course, that micro bevel is going to grow in time the more that I sharpen. You also do not need to flatten the backs of their irons. This gray is actually a rust preventative, so they don't recommend you flatten the back, but you do need to just hone off that micro bevel, or polish off the burr. So eventually it will go away, but you don't need to spend the time trying to flatten the back of this iron. If you bought this plane used, you're really going to want to check the skew. Make sure the skew of the iron is appropriate for this plane. I'll put the number on the screen of what that is supposed to be. This one was new. I actually don't think my buddy ever sharpened this plane. I'm not even sure he even used the plane. When you are setting up a rabbet plane, this is not like a shoulder plane. You do not want the iron to be perfectly flush with this side. It actually needs to protrude very slightly. Okay, you don't need to stress on, oh, it has to be 1/64. Well, how do I figure out 1/6? Don't worry about it. Run your finger along here and you'll be able to tell. Just be careful because if you sharpened correctly, it's very sharp on that corner. Shoulder planes reference off of this side. So normally you could just set the plane down, put the iron in there, and push, and then you've got a shoulder plane. For the rabbet plane, that protrusion, so you can't just set it down and do that. Okay? If you guys have a different theory, different philosophy, whatever, go ahead and let me know down below. But I've always been told, and I've always done it, that this has to protrude just very slightly. So when you put the iron in here, be careful, of course, that you don't ding it. Now, there are these two set screws. You can see them right there. What those do is they help get your iron parallel or equal protrusion on both sides. I can't say square because it's skewed, but you know what I mean. You want to make sure that this is protruding just very slightly right there. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that. Very, very slight protrusion. And then you want to make sure that it's equal all the way across. What you can do is put the cap on and tighten it down slightly. You can actually sight this down like a plane. Find the angle that you want to look at it easier, like that. Adjust, adjust, adjust until you see the protrusion of the iron. You can do it that way. You can do it by feeling like that, which is something that I've done for a long time, and I know people on YouTube are going to yell at me about that because it's a sharp iron, but I've never cut myself doing this. It's not protruded right now. I've never cut myself doing this. If you want to use your fingernail or whatever, you can, but you can check it that way. The other way, and I might get flack for this too, if you have a flat board that you know is flat, plane it. See if it's cutting equally on both sides or across. If you see that it's taking more on one side, then adjust your lateral. Take your time with this. Use these set screws to micro adjust your lateral because this doesn't move. This doesn't have a lateral adjustment here. It's these two set screws. That's what's going to change it. While you're adjusting those, make sure you push your thumb against this. So you're pushing the iron against those set screws. Twist, twist, check. Twist, twist, check, however you check. Keep doing that until you get equal protrusion along the iron, along the body and the blade. You know what I'm trying to say. Setting the depth stop and setting the fence on planes is very important. For example, if you cut your rabbet too deep or you cut it too far onto the board, you probably won't be able to use that piece in your project anymore and you're going to have to start over. If you're anything like me, that means that you're going back to rough cut and milling up a brand new board to make up for that mistake. So take your time on this part. I'm going to show you a couple different methods. use what you have, but I do want to point out that this is in order from my favorite to my least favorite. The tape measure is my least favorite because it has this metal piece right here that moves. Okay, now this one accounts for it. So if I put it on a board and pull, it's 11/16. If I push, it's 3/4. See that? 11/16, 3/4. That right there can mess up your project. Just that little bit, okay? This tape measure accounts for it when it's in the pulled motion. I can tell that because when I take this board and I line it up to that, you can see it goes to 11/16. Okay, so this tape measure accounts for it when it's pulled. If you're going to use this to set the depth or set the stop, and you're pushing like this, it's going to be a 1/16 off. See what I mean? The other thing you can do is line up how I did with the board, line it up onto the 1 inch or the 2 inch, line it up right there, and then try to set your depth stop, but that's leaving it up to you. And then you might want to try to figure out how to turn it this way, so it's difficult to use a tape measure. It can be done, but just know that if you're going to do it this way, and you're trying to set it to like 1/2 inch, just know you need to go to 9/16 for it to be accurate. But check your tape measure. Do what I did with this board. So put it up to the 1 inch. I see that it's 11/16. Put it up against here and pull. Okay, 11/16, push, 3/4. All right, that's not it. So I know it accounts for it on the pull. Just something to keep in mind with tape measures across the board, to be honest with you. But I don't like this method for setting depth stops or fences for that reason. The other method you have is just a ruler. You can take a ruler, make sure that it's accurate. So check it on your tape measure, check it on something else. You can check it with a stop block, whatever you want. Make sure that your ruler is accurate. This one's actually really cheap. I don't know where it came from, but it's a super cheap one. So I'm not even sure that it's accurate, but just for this example. So what you can do is you can take it and bump it against there. Like that. Now remember, this is leaving it up to you to make sure that you know what the lines are, that you have it lined up well. It's also a little bit difficult. I mean, if you set the plane down, it's easier, but setting it, okay, I want to go to 1/2 inch. Oh, it just slid under it. How does that, wow. Okay, well, tape measure might not work for this plane. Maybe I have it too loose. There we go, so you'll slide it like that. Check both sides, tighten it down, double check yourself. I just don't prefer this method because of that. The next one, you can use a square. Set it to whatever you want. So if you're going to go to 1/2 inch, slide it over, set it there. Make sure you know your square, because I've seen some of them where you need to be past the line. Sometimes it's on the line, you know, so keep that in mind. Double check it on something else. Lock that down. And then you can do the same thing, except this is referencing on the bottom of the plane. See that? So it'll create basically like a positive stop for you. So boom, bump it there, lock it down. Okay, so you can use that method as well. This one essentially does the same thing. So you twist this and set it to where you want it. So I want to go to 1/2 inch. So I'm going to line that 1/2 inch up with this piece right here. Lock it down. And then you go to your plane, reference it up against there, bump the depth stop there, tighten it down. The stop blocks are my favorite, or excuse me, the setup blocks. They're my favorite just because they're accurate. Nothing is left up to me. Nothing is left up to like the tape measure, making sure that I have that right. Nothing's left up to where I line this up. If it's going to be a little bit off, it's easiest. They're not that expensive either. They have a ton of different expansions for this, but I just have the basic. It's got like 3/4, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, 8 inch, 1/16 of an inch. What you can do too is you can stack them together. So say I need 1/4 inch plus a 1/16, you can stack them on there like that. So you don't really need all of the expansions. This one has gotten me by for, man, a while now. So, all right, with this method, what you can do is take it, set it on the side here, bump it up against there, and use your finger to feel that it's lined up, and then tighten it down, check yourself. I don't prefer that with using stop blocks. What I prefer is actually setting it on the board. So let me show you that. So I set it on the board. Right now the fence is off. If you're going to have the fence on it, just make sure you leave yourself enough reference area that it's not rocking. So just set it on the board or a flat surface. Take your stop block, slide it in there. loosen the fence, drop it down. I like to push down on the top of the fence. I don't know if it's just a habit or what, but I do that. Lock it down, and there you go. Now you know for a fact this is set to 1/4 inch, and it's perfectly flush with the bottom. Setting the fence is a lot of the same methods. So if you're going to use the tape measure, just remember you need to account for that metal piece if you're going to bump it down. For this one, you do want to make sure that you're checking both sides. What I do is I just line it up with the rods. It's just easier. I mean, you can go to the far, whatever. Just make sure you're checking both sides. Accounting for this if you're using a tape measure. The ruler, it actually slides under this because the fence is lifted. So you're going to need to turn it to the side, but you still can use a ruler. It's just, again, up to you. The square, you can also do the square, but you're going to need to tilt it a little bit, which, be careful with that. But you can line it up, check both sides. The reason you have to tilt it is because this one can also slide underneath. For the depth gauge, same thing. Tilt it to the side a little bit. Well, I don't even know if this one will go. There we go, like that. You have to tilt it almost completely to the side to use the depth gauge. For the setup blocks for this one, we want to do 3/4. So you can set it to the side, feel like that. But let me show you again my preferred method. So this method is a lot easier if you set the depth stop later, because right now what you could do is take the depth stop off, but you really don't need to. So just set the plane on a flat surface, loosen the fence so it just kind of swings freely. Take your stop block, set it under there, drop your fence down. Oh, is it touching already? It is, okay. So there you go. Hold the plane, hold the fence, lock it down. When you're setting the fence, if you find that you are not even on both sides, it's an easy fix. Just undo one side, push it where you need it, tighten it down. You don't need to undo both because there is a little bit of play in there. Now, it's not going to be that far off, but you do try to want to get it as accurate as possible. That's another reason I like the stop blocks, is for just doing it this way. So now that you have everything set, it's time. It is time to use the plane. So what you'll notice too is this knob is set diagonally. Okay, so it's not completely straight up with the plane, which is telling me that I need pressure to go this way and downward. So you're giving it diagonal pressure. You can hold on to the knob, but you might find yourself doing this, where you hold just under the knob. And that's okay too. Just do something that's comfortable. Make sure you're giving yourself enough pressure this way and then enough downward pressure as well. Personally, I would say that pressure this way is more important than downward pressure because this is a little forward heavy, which is good for this kind of plane in my opinion. So, I know I might get flack for this too. There's a couple different ways that you can start this. You can start at one end and work your way back like you do with a plow plane. You can just go for it depending on how deep you have the cutter going. I like to take light passes. You can definitely have this take thicker shavings. I don't like to. Maybe just because I'm not in a production shop and I enjoy using hand planes. So, all right, let's go for it and I'll show you this plane in action. These are really thin. I'm going to try to go a little bit deeper. Let's try that right there. There we go. Did you see that? Let me see if I can just get another one. They keep falling right out, which is good, but that's what you get. This is what you want it to look like. You want it to be in a curl like that. If you're not doing that, if that's not happening, check the protrusion. Make sure that you're equal on both sides. Maybe you're taking too heavy of a shaving, too light of a shaving, but this right here, this is ideal for me. I love these curly cues. They also make really good fire starters. See that? And then you start your fire. You can already see it's got it formed. For video purposes, I probably should have set the depth a little bit shallower. I'm gonna try taking heavier passes. I like the shavings that I'm getting, but again, video purposes, let me see how this works. Oh, that was awesome. Let me grab that one. Look at that. That's a beast. I like it. There we go. That's a pretty serious rabbit. Look at these. These are awesome. I gotta get me one of these planes. These are sweet. Alright, so that was a lot of fun. I'm not even gonna lie, that was a blast cutting that. So, the next thing I'm gonna show you is how to set this knicker. So the first thing you gotta do, you don't have to take the plane apart, but you do need to move the depth stop out of the way because you need to access that screw. So first, see that in there? That's the first thing that we need to loosen. That's a flathead, so just take it and loosen it. Okay, you don't need to loosen it at the time, just loosen it a little bit. Now this one is a flathead, but if you have a small screwdriver, so this is a screwdriver that I keep around for all of the Veritas set screws. I actually ground it down, if you can see that, to make it fit in here. You can still take this and use it to adjust that. So just turn it to where it's protruding. See that? So just take the corner of it, stick it in there and turn it. Okay? Then turn it back over to this that screw again and lock it down. If you find that this isn't sticking proud enough of the plane, there is a set screw, but you will have to take the plane apart for it because it's behind this rod right here. So let me show you that. It's okay. It's in there. I don't know that you're going to be able to see it. There it is. See that? So if you find that this isn't sticking far enough out, you can set this, which it looks like I need to move mine out a little bit. I think my screwdriver will read. All right, that looks good to me. I'm going to put it back together. Oh, here, I'll show you. All right, now I'll put it back together. I'm not going to actually measure it. I'm just going to set it because we're just going to go cross grain a couple times, show you guys that. I am going to change this so we don't cut as deep as we did before. Let's just go a little bit. How about right there? For cross grain application, the first thing you want to do is get this knicker to create a line. So you set your plane down and draw it back. Set it down, draw it back a couple times. Okay, until you get it to reference. There we go. Can you see that line in there that it scored? I don't think you can see it in the video, but there's a line right here that it scored, and then we are ready to start planing. All right, so what you're seeing right now in the corner is me planing this side of the rabbit, and I was running into issues. I then fixed it to plane this side, but I didn't do a good job of explaining it, so I want to show that to you guys right now. So what I did is I had the knicker too far out. It was too far past the bottom of the plane, so what it was doing was actually making the plane tilt this way and giving me an uneven cut. So you want to make sure that this knicker is just slightly proud of the bottom of the plane. You do the same thing. You loosen that, adjust it, get it where you want it, tighten it down. The other thing you want to make sure is that this knicker is lined up with the corner of that blade. Now be careful because the corner of that blade is very sharp. I don't know if you can see, but I cut myself with it. So make sure that this is lined up with the corner of that blade as close as you can get it. You don't want it too far and you don't want it too shallow. You want to try to get it as spot on as possible. To do that, that's when you loosen this and you adjust that set screw in there. Tightening it brings it out farther away from the blade, loose from the plane. Loosening it puts it tighter to the plane. So hopefully that helps explain how I got this next rabbit to work really well. What I do want to do is round this slightly to prevent that chip out. Oh, why is this all loose? Normally this is set up. All right, let's try it again. Oh, I'm taking really heavy cuts. That could be it too. There we go. That one went better than the other side. Here's the other side. Yeah, see? I really enjoyed using this plane. It was a lot of fun. Clearly, I need to practice when it comes to the cross-grain application. The very first one, that was my fault completely because I had the knicker out too far. So just keep that in mind. This second one went really well. It went really smooth. With these chip outs, okay, I didn't score any lines. So if you are going to go cross grain, I would recommend taking your square and a marking knife or a marking gauge or something to score that line to help prevent some of that tear out. Rounding it over did help until I started getting a little bit deeper into the cut. If you guys have other tips and tricks on how people can avoid those, let us know down below. When it comes to planing right here, or on the other side too, you want to be careful that you're not tilting the plane, so put a lot of pressure against the fence. Once you start this, the blade is going to reference in that, and that's going to help, but you can still teeter it. So just take time. Don't dive into using it on your project. Use some scrap boards until you get that muscle memory down. The other thing I noticed is just go for it. Just plane. The slower I went, the worse it was, to be honest with you. If you just plane, it was referencing very well and it was staying very square doing it that way. The other tip that I have is there's a lot of reference area right here, so use that to your advantage when you're starting a cut. So what I would do is either tilt it this way and drop it down, or tilt it this way and drop it down, and then push it against the board. So tilt it, drop, push against the board, and then plane. Use that to your advantage. It's very, very helpful. It's also good to get it set up and help it get square, so then when you just go for it, it stays in that position. If you guys have this plane and like it, have the plane and don't like it, any questions, any comments, anything like that, feel free to let us know down below. I'm really tempted not to send this plane back to my buddy, but I'm going to, and this plane is definitely on my wish list now. Just for these. I mean, it's just awesome. All right, enjoy.